Hello and welcome back to Coffee Kurosawa. I am your friendly neighborhood film fanatic, Ben Filipkowski.
And I'm Farrah Sarpkaya, a person who loves film, but like in a super chill, the script of this movie is the cutest thing I've read all week kind of way.
And this week we are watching the 2008 animated film Wall-E from Pixar Studios. It's rated G and it features Ben Burt, Alyssa Knight, Jeff Garlin, Fred Willard, and Sigourney Weaver in voice roles. This was your pick though, Farrah, so why don't we dive into your summary?
All right, so the year somewhere around 2800 Common Era. The soundtrack Hello Dolly, and the place a planet utterly abandoned and drowning in garbage. Turns out, thanks to some excellent exposition featuring a live action Fred Willard, not just a voiceover, humanity left the Earth with dreams to return when the planet can again support life. Until then, the big box store by and large left some robots to clean the planet. By now, though, it's only one robot, as far as we know. Almost a millennia later, Wall-E compacts and stacks garbage. And as he does, he collects things he finds interesting to bring home, and eventually he finds something new to add to his collection: a plant. A few days later, his presumably centuries-long routine is thrown off when a robot arrives from space, in search, we soon learn, for proof of Earth's ability to support life again. Wall-E falls in love immediately with the elegant Eve, and is crushed when she enters hibernation mode upon seeing the plant, thus fulfilling phase 1 of her directive. Wall-E tries to wake her up. He babysits her, basically, for many days, it seems, but eventually he goes back to his lonely work, leaving her safe at home. Or so he thinks. A spaceship arrives to take Eve away, and Wall-E rushes to join her, leaving his cockroach behind as the spaceship crashes through a halo of discarded satellites that encircle the Earth. The pair arrive finally on the Axiom, the ship where all of the humans have run off to, where the human passengers have lost their bone density, and we shift from live-action humans to full animation. Eve arrives at the captain's quarters, but she discovers that the plant is missing. After much mischief and many misunderstandings, Eve and Wall-E discover the plant was stolen by the ship's autopilot because the by and large leadership believed that Operation Cleanup quote-unquote failed, making life unsustainable on Earth forever, and created a new directive to keep humanity in space forever. The human captain insists that they should return, but the autopilot disposes of the plant, sets the ship's robots to capture Wall-E and Eva, and traps the captain in his quarters. A daring rescue and some heartbreak later, the plant is rescued, but Wall-E is critically injured in the process. The ship returns to Earth, fulfilling that part of the directive, and Eve repairs him using parts from the other Wall-E units. He comes back to life, but he isn't him, until she taps her face to his face, known amongst humans usually as, a kiss, and inadvertently transfers her memories to him via an electric shock. Roll credits as Wall-E and Eve finally hold hands and humanity rebuilds life on Earth. Ben, you'd never actually seen this, which came out during our lore drop episode about me. So, I'm very intrigued at what you thought about it.
Yeah, I hadn't really checked it out at all. I had, of course, heard a lot of rave reviews about it, so it was nice to sit down and just check it out. I think I'm a real sucker for emotive robots because this really pulled at my heartstrings in a way I was not fully expecting. I liked this movie. I think it does an incredible job of communicating a lot of story and emotion with pretty minimal dialogue. I have read a bunch about how it's basically a silent film for the first half, but that does not feel accurate or right to me. There is a lot of dialogue. It's just not all, actual words being spoken. It's sounds and vocalizations. And there is communication happening, even if we're not privy to the exact phrasing. So I thought that was really nice. That was really interesting. You'd also shown me the script, and the script is I'm reading. I'm like, yeah, this is the movie. There's nothing revelatory in the lines that Wall-E and Eve say to each other. It's all there on the screen for us to see and hear. Which I think just speaks to how effectively they created these characters and brought them to life. Really wonderful. And I think what stands out to me the most about this is just how much it commits to that focus on visual storytelling, on like showing us what's happening versus having people talk about it. Um, we are kind of in an age where I think a lot of people might agree that Pixar movies are very straightforward. And even insofar as kids' movies can go, like I think that there's a lot of it's kind of all there on the surface level. And admittedly, I don't watch a ton of Pixar movies these days. So this was a nice watch because it does invite you to pay closer attention. Like there's no voice in your ear saying like, hey, this is my
Yeah.
motivation. This is what I care about. So you kind of have to watch, and it was really nice to get sucked into that. It is a nice reminder that acting and emotion are just as much about physicality and expression as the words someone is speaking. Probably more so than the words someone is speaking. Yeah, I don't know that any of this is like a really like radical development in filmmaking or storytelling, but it is all like really well done. There's a lot of craft and care and passion on full display. I really enjoyed just seeing all that writ large. Insofar as like theme and idea, yeah, this is. I mean, this came out in 2008, but it's still, a very cautionary tale about current society. But it's also just a simple and beautiful love story. And seeing it all play out on screen, a true delight. I think everyone involved in bringing the characters to life did an incredible job, and the rest of the cast certainly bring their characters to life beautifully. But kind of like on that note, Ben Burt provided the quote unquote voice of Wally. Um, we can absolutely get into this later, but Ben Burt is probably best known for being the guy behind nearly every iconic sound effect in Star Wars. So like he did the sound design for Chewbacca's vocalizations and roars. He's the guy responsible for the lightsaber ignition, the lightsaber hum and swing sounds. He made all of that. The screaming engines of a TIE fighter. This is this guy. Like he went out and created these sounds. And in terms of creating sound, the way that they brought Wally to life started with recording Bert and Alyssa Knight, who voices Eve, recording these lines, feeding the recordings into a computer, slicing them up, and then applying different pitches and post processing effects until they arrived at the sounds they wanted. So they basically sampled the human performance and remixed them and kind of used it as an instrument. I think that's really cool and really fascinating. A really neat way to look at it. And just like a fun fact, Eve's laser gun sound is the sound of a slinky, like the toy
Uh
slinky,
huh.
stretched out like all the way, and you hold it at one end, and you put a microphone at the other end, and you strike it at one end, and that's the laser sound.
That's so cool.
Uh, and like you hear the raw. There's a video of like they get the raw audio of that sound versus like the finished effect. You're like, yeah, 1 to 1. Like they obviously did more work on it, but it's like recognizably that's the sound. Um, Love that. Foley work like that, where like the artists will kind of come in and create the sound effects to match up with what's on screen. Man, I love that stuff. That's so cool. And that's kind of all I've got as far as impressions go.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it does not rely on what we would consider voices in voice acting, which it very much is, but like it's not in the traditional sense. It really forces you to consider how we as humans and, robots, I guess, react to sound and how we like build understanding on pitch and tone and speed and all these different things.
Mhm.
Like one of the things that I've had to practice a lot with the voiceover stuff is understanding how to change like a short ad or a short like a couple of words or whatever and change the entire meaning of it. And like looking at the script, right? We have basically Eva, Eva, like it just over and over and over again. But with every single line, there's an explanation of what he's talking about or what
Yeah.
he's referencing or whatever.
Yeah.
And how much that really just like similarly with, acting in masks or in Wally's case, acting with like just eyeballs and their
Not even
how the
eyeballs.
lenses,
Yeah, lenses. Yeah.
and how much that can like change our perception of tone or whatever is so cool. Like, but it's not surprising that a person who worked so much on Star Wars with all the droids and stuff, who will absolutely break your heart, also was very closely involved in this movie, um, which will absolutely break your heart. So all that to say, I think the first thing we really wanted to dive into is telling human stories without a whole lot of humans, right? Because as we get into the Axiom, the ship that the humans are actually on, we've already seen Wally fall in love with Eva. And I'm going to use he, him pronouns for Wally and she, her pronouns for Eva, but like they're robots. They don't have gender, right? It's just a kind of short form for helping us understand which one is which. And the way Wally expresses his admiration for Eve, from making art for her to watching over her when she is, by his understanding, like unable to act on her own, like all these different ways,
Hmm.
is just so like, oh man, it crushes me every time. I'm just like, oh, it's so cute. He's just a robot in love.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then there's that shot, not shot towards the end, that moment toward in like the third act when
Mm-hmm.
the captain does like the video download off of Eve, and she gets to see
Yeah.
the security cam footage of Wally like with the umbrella over her during the storms and just like being worried and caring for her.
Yeah.
Oh my god, my heart could not take
It's so
that.
cute.
Oh, even
I
thinking about it,
know.
I'm like, oh my goodness, this is too much.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. And then once we get onto the ship, obviously, we find ourselves on a kind of idealized future where there is no want for
Mm,
anything. But that has also caused a lot of sedentary nature of humanity, right? Everybody is fully plugged into a screen at all times. Nobody is walking. They're just being automated to go from room to room to room. We see people have friendships, but at points people finally touch and it's like, oh, I can touch a person. And there's shock. And like, there's children, but I have questions about how they get made. You know, it's stuff like that. And the interactions we see between the robots is so much more human than the interactions we see at the beginning between the humans,
mhm.
which is a interesting take on AI, particularly because when Wally gets reset, he turns back into a robot. Like his actions are more robotic,
Yeah.
right? And he doesn't become himself, quote unquote, again until Eve re-updates him with their memories. And it's just like, I don't know. It's an interesting kind of flip in how we understand technology, and particularly now with,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm
AI and all the things.
I'm just gonna come down hard on one thing here. She
Mm.
doesn't re-update him. They kiss. It's true love's
Yes.
kiss.
No, you're right. You're right. It is True Love's kiss.
I feel very strongly
Um.
about that. Yeah, like it's certainly. We were talking before we hit record about the whole like work for the system versus the system works for you,
Mhm.
and this is still like the system works for you, but there's nothing else for you to do.
Yeah.
You know, like they're in this post. I don't not like post scarcity utopia. Like they kind of are. Like they have all their needs taken care of.
Yeah.
But as a result, they've become complacent. And it's like, how do people meet each other? Well, like Mary, who is voiced by Kathy Najimy, who you may know from Hocus Pocus, or I know from her voice work as Peggy Hill, two-time Substitute Teacher of the Year award winner from King of the Hill. She has a line about how like she just can't meet anybody and like through all like the dating, like they're all on like dating apps basically,
Yeah.
and she can't have that connection, and she has an actual like meet cute with John, I think it's John,
Yeah.
who's voiced by John Ratzenberger, better known as Cliff Calvin from Cheers, or Ham the piggy bank in Toy Story. Like they have a meet cute, and it's kind of it's so like beautiful that is the result of like the other love story playing out, of that flyby outside the ship that Eve and Wally have amongst the stars. And I can't remember, like Mary's like screen has like a glitch or a malfunction or breaks or something, and she like turns her head and looks at it, she's like, oh wow, the stars. And then there's Wally and Eve, and I think she like grabs John, just happens to be like the nearest person, and they're like, and she's like, look at that, and he's like, oh, that's Wally, because like he's met little Wally at some point. And then their hands touch, and then they look at each other, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so cute, like this is adorable. It's just like this, so much of this movie has been like this warm blanket. Like watching it one time, and I was like, oh my god, this is adorable. I love all of it. And just like the idea of like that circling back to where we started with this discussion, the fact that like the people are kind of like, they're literally on predetermined tracks. They interact with each other through screens. They kind of just like, there's that thing, it's like, was it blue is the new red? And to like immediately like buy like a suit update, and their suits change color. It's just like such a consumerist society, and they don't have much purpose other than to kind of like exist and buy things and go about this routine.
There's a point where the autopilot is like, you must stay on the ship to survive, and the captain's like, I don't want to survive, I want to live. And you're like, yeah there it is.
And the fact that so many of these, well, not even all of them, but like all the character robots are in many ways more human than human. Like they have more outright emotion, more purpose. And that's also a theme in Blade Runner. Like but you know, in Blade Runner, it's the murderous replicants there that are like, that are explicitly identified as more human than human. Like it's the tagline of the corporation that makes them. And like our main character is like this neo-noir detective there who's like completely closed off from emotional connection. And the things that he's, you know, the androids that he's told to track down and air quote retire, just, they explicitly call out like they feel things so strongly, and they're allowed to feel things so strongly. And it's like that's the whole dichotomy there. And so, you know, in that way, Wally's basically Blade Runner, but for kids. I stand by that statement. I'm not making
put
any.
That in like a social post.
Huge leaps there.
I mean, it's not an uncommon theme in just general sci-fi, right? Like there are so many different, that Alita, Battle Angel, you know. I won't go through the list because I'll forget a million of them. But like the idea that as we humans program what most folks understand to be artificial intelligence, we don't just program them with information. We're trying to program them with feelings, right? And that's harder to do because feelings are messy and complicated and don't make any sense a lot of the time. And so trying to apply logic to that is a challenge. And I think in this movie, they show that they evolve, which is also very interesting as they gain information, which is machine learning, right? Is the, you know, the
well, to be clear,
yes,
what we think of as artificial intelligence today is machine learning. It is, we are training systems on data sets, and like it's basically if X then Y, versus what we see in this is what we would probably think of when you say the words artificial intelligence. Most people think sentient robots who feel things. Like that's
that's exactly it. Yeah.
So like, where am I going with this? the notion that uh, these characters are like they're characters, and we see that there's a kind of a real difference between some of these robots have much more explicit personalities than the others. Like there are a lot of like the security bots are just kind of they are those kind of mindless automatons to some extent.
Yep.
But like all the like I think I call them the little freak robots who get put into like the maintenance
Yeah.
Room. They are all effectively sentient, and they have wants and desires. And
Yep.
even if that want and desire is to just do their job really well, like the little sanitation bot
Mo.
who just wants to was contaminant detected and just wants to clean up everything. That's what he wants to do, and he's damn it, he's gonna do that job, and he's gonna do it very well.
But he wasn't one of the broken robots.
No, that's true.
You know, like he just was part of the machine. Like even their secretary bot.
Yeah.
You know, Wally teaches them, I don't know, to wave. And when it learns how to wave, it's so excited to wave to someone again, and it does it when they're leaving.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you experienced excitement at learning a new thing and being able to apply that new thing. And that's really cool because it gives you that, not just it's learning, but that it can feel joy in learning.
Yeah.
Which is kind of neat.
Yeah. That's where I was going with it. It's like, it's a machine that's learning, but it's not necessarily machine learning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what, again, like you're saying, that's what's really cool about it. And really fun about it. Like it's not a boxing robot. It's the tennis robot or the golf robot.
It might be a massage robot now that I think about it.
But the one that just like, I just want to hit things.
Yeah.
And it gets to do that, and it does it so well. Is really, really funny to me. Yes. And gets to, defend all our heroes from
security bots.
Yeah, from from our antagonists, and just so nice. Also, like the cute little cockroach guy.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that. There's a cute little cockroach, and he's, nothing that happens to this, like, you cannot kill this cockroach. It's run over multiple times. I think a spaceship lands on him. Nothing happens.
Yes.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Very adorable.
I mean, yeah. I gotta wonder, how long has Wally been hanging out with that one specific robot? Is that, or cockroach?
Yeah.
Is that the one cockroach of the whole world, or are there multiple and he's been like the generational,
This is like
guide.
The 700th generation of the cockroach family. I don't know. We'll see.
Exactly. Right.
Very fun.
He is the human to the golden retriever cockroach.
We gotta. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, go.
Well, we gotta talk a little. We kind of touched on this briefly like a moment ago, but the Wally's got some real expressive eyes that aren't eyes. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that for a second there, because I find that there's something about like the minimalistic design of like the eyes, and particularly on these cute little robot characters, that is just so damn effective. It's remarkable that Wally has, in those moments where he is like the sad little puppy, he's got watery eyes. Yeah. But they're not. They're not eyeballs. That he can't have tears. So it's like you look at it, it's a trick of the lighting that they're pulling. They're lighting the scene in such a way that it looks like he's welling up a little bit, and catching reflections that way. That's just such a neat little trick, and it works so well.
I mean, it's that thing where humans, we a lot of people anyway, ascribe faces to like cars or vacuum cleaners or whatever, right? And so you just give a car a pair of eyelashes or some eyebrows, it's a face. I don't care what you say, it's a face, right?
Yeah.
And so with Wally, particularly when he stops being Wally and he's just a Wall-E unit, right? He loses all expression. There is nothing there on his face. Like, they've designed it in such a way that you can see it's just nothing, right? And then when he comes back, the eye lenses refocus, to have that glimmer of life again. The eyebrows pop up, all these things that they like stretch and whatever. And the attention to detail there on how do we take this thing that is just a face that humans will put onto a thing to making it actually a dynamic face.
Yeah.
Is very cool.
Yeah. And, in stark contrast to another Pixar movie series, Cars, man, it drives me nuts. The eyes of the cars in the Cars universe are the windshield and not the headlights.
Yes. Yep.
Why?
I can only assume it would be unnerving.
I guess, but
right?
We're talking about how you put the eyelashes on a car's headlights and it's got eyes because the front grill is the mouth, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
I think it would be unnerving for kids because the construction of a face is so important, right? And if you're looking at a thing, if you actually put eyes where the eyes, quote unquote, headlights are on a car, it would look so uncanny valley because they'd be more like a shark.
Yeah,
than a human.
There were some old Chevron commercials that had animated talking cars, and I found them. I was a kid when these came out, and I was like, I like these commercials. Those cars are cool. Yeah. This is just a way for me to complain about Cars. That's all.
Yeah.
Cars the movie.
We just had to put this in. Yeah. Just not Cars generally.
Yeah.
Bringing us back, I will say there are other robots. Obviously Eve has eyes, just like little pixel art eyes, and that's her face. And then we have critters like Mo, the little cleaner robot, right? Mo. He emotes very grumpy. He's just always grumpy because everything is messy and we gotta clean it all. But he doesn't have he has a face, but he doesn't have anything that moves for that. He does, however, have arms and his little cleaner thing, and he can shrug, And so the ways that they really bring out these personalities and their own experiences and feelings about the world without words so much as just tone. I'm grumpy even if I'm not saying grumpy. That's that stuff. And just body language and all these, your shoulders get hunched and your chin goes down. And it's so cool. I just love how they brought it all to life that way.
What's the gif of Patrick Stewart smiling and nodding and saying, acting?
Acting. Yeah. Yeah. But it's little robots acting, and that's great.
Well, and more than that, it's it's animators working in conjunction with the directors and the designers to bring this to life. And I think that is I think this is this is a movie that really captures that the Pixar magic. Their special sauce that they bring to everything is so on display in this. And I don't think it's I don't think it's a stretch to say this is probably one of the most beloved Pixar movies, or certainly one of the highest regarded Pixar movies. It was directed by Andrew Stanton, who did, I'm vamping here while I look up what else he did. But he's won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature twice for Finding Nemo and for WALL-E.
Yes. That
He's the director on WALL-E. He's the director on Finding Nemo, director on Finding Dory. He also branched out to do live action with John Carter, the John Carter from Mars adaptation, which was a total box office bomb, but it was actually a pretty decent movie, a decent enough movie. He's also a writer on Toy Story 2, Bug's Life. He's so heavily involved in so many things with Pixar. He will be doing Toy Story 5 next year, apparently. But this is a bit of a digression here, but this is such a highly regarded Pixar movie, and this is actually also the first Disney slash Pixar movie that has been entered into the Criterion Collection, which is this kind of collection of foreign film, of art house film, and of other films that are kind of like deemed important by, uh, this kind of like assembly of critics and historians. So this is like the only movie that's kind of gotten that treatment so far from like the Disney and Pixar library of films, which I think is like really like that says something. Like this is a really profound movie in many ways, as much as it is just like a fun thing to watch.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great example of like growing up, you watch all these cartoons, like the Bugs Bunnies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the whatever. And then you go back and you watch it as an adult, you're like, oh, scandalous. There's so many dirty jokes in this. And like, you know, and it's the beauty of coming back to a film, years later and being like, oh, I missed all of this stuff. Cool, 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 cool,
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in a good way. And WALL-E, I think, is a really great example of, it's a good story for kids. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's a cute robot. You can sell tons of merch. But also, it's a heartbreaking and introspective look at the world that we are creating. And it plays very different in 2025 than it did in 2008 when it came out as well, which is not as different as I'd hoped it would play, but
Well, I think it's less like this is a movie that I don't think it's not like it necessarily has. It's not. I wouldn't say that it has like those bonus things for parents, if that makes sense. I think that like the kind of like central theme of like, maybe we shouldn't pollute so much. It's very on the nose, and I think kids would pick up on that as much as anyone else. And like we were talking a bit about this before we hit record, as we always do. And yeah, it certainly does read a certain way in 2025, where big tech and and air quote AI and this whole like concept of like the system that once worked for us, we are increasingly working for it. This still presents like, I think if you make WALL-E today, it would probably be a lot more explicit in like, the people are working for the machine, like they're keeping it running through like labor of some sort, versus 2008. We're all just screen addicted phone addicts basically. And I mean, we probably arguably are even more so now, but yeah, like I think it does come back to like, so that like we are rapidly becoming the automatons that this movie kind of presents and warns us about. So
yeah, I mean, the idea that we are, and this is me getting dangerously close to being political here, the idea that we are getting ChatGPT and whatever, that we are getting AI quote unquote tools to make our images, but not automate our dangerous whatever tedious roles. That's where it falls apart for me, right? And so here we've seen like all of these robots are doing the the cleaning and the repairing and the guarding and all that stuff, and that's great. But the humans have also still lost their creativity. And that's a very interesting like look into maybe what we thought was going to happen 15, 20 years ago. And I don't know. It's, I don't know. Humanity and how we see, and this is maybe a good place to pivot into the idea of value.
Yeah.
How we look at life and what we value in life, and how we decide what to automate versus what to retain as human jobs, right? Quote unquote jobs, has a really interesting thread in this movie. And the one example I'll kind of stand up at first is the glam bot. Not in modern. It's not the camera that goes around in a circle. There's a little robot. She's pink. And its job is to do your hair, give you a haircut, do your makeup, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it, at the same time as it does all that stuff, it has chatter. It goes, "Oh, honey, I know," or like, "Isn't that just like a man?" Or like, "I just don't believe," like, but when we see them at first, it looks like they're having a conversation with the people
Yeah.
that they're working on. But then a glam bot wakes up the captain and just goes through the script.
Yeah.
And we've automated human interaction.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not necessarily a person that always loves small talk, but that sounds awful. A robot small talking at me while I'm waking up sounds atrocious.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, well, it's like the I think a lot of people, it's such a common thing in this day and age for people to be like, oh, I just hate small talk. And it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, that kind of makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just stuck in a room with someone for a few minutes and you're waiting, you're like, so how about that weather? Like,
Mm-hmm.
these are just icebreakers. And I think like that's the thing that gets lost. Like, people don't like small talk because they think it's like, oh, we should be talking about something more important. It's like, well, like maybe you could do that if you did more small talk. Like, you got to break that ice. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have strong feelings about this whatsoever, in any way, shape, or form. No, it's yeah, like it's interesting that like we see people are still interacting with one another, but even if they're like the there's that shot of people golfing, and the robots are doing the swings for them, and they're still kind of like interacting with each other, but they're just staring at their screens. So like they're right next to each other, but they're still FaceTiming each other basically.
Yes.
And I had like a moment of like, oh well, like why are they even doing that? And then I was like, oh right, hang on, I've played golf video games. Yeah, no, that okay, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're extrapolating on things that we currently have and be like, what's the logical conclusion of this, or how can we like take this, like really turn it up to 11 and make it this ridiculous thing?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some of it it's a little too close to home as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like the whole like they don't. There's a pool. No one goes in the pool really, or
Yeah.
they kind of do, but they're not allowed to splash. They're floating above it in their chairs. There's like the running track. So it's like there were all these things that were designed to keep people fit and active, but they just gradually, moved away from it. And
just got sedentary and yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that. I have a stationary bike that I've ridden like twice in the past 2 weeks, so that's not fun. But
I mean, I think the going back to the FaceTiming while you're next to each other thing. It's a funny one because you and I both GM for each other in Dungeons and Dragons games, wherein our partners are also in those games. So I will be GMing at my house, and my husband will be in his office because we are video calling, or we are like audio calling with you and your wife. And then same thing, like you guys are sitting in the same house
yeah,
on a call together.
yeah, it's very
And
it's weird
it's
sometimes. Yeah,
yeah, it's weird. And, I have game nights with friends who are down in like Pennsylvania or like around the States. And my husband and I are both playing with those people, but we're in two separate rooms in the house. So our quality time is removed. And like, so I saw that and was like, oh no.
no, yeah,
But also
yeah.
like,
yeah.
it's a weird one.
Yes, it's a challenging thing. Like, yeah, like I think that is part of like the benefit of this is that you watch this movie, and again, it's a movie that invites you to engage and to actively watch it because it is so sparse in actual dialogue. And as a result, you're watching it and you're seeing things. It's like, ooh, that's a little close to home. Like, that's a little too real for me. And I think that's what makes it effective. And I think that's, yeah, I mean, like they've built this spaceship utopia. Like, it is beautiful, it's comfortable, and I say largely post scarcity. Maybe not to the extent of Star Trek, where it's like we've solved pollution, we've solved hunger, we've solved we've solved the need for individual currency and
Yeah.
capital. And I know that this is probably going to sound a little dangerously close to "Please read my manifesto," but like I don't know. Yeah, like they're still bound by like the reality of our contemporary modes of production, and wastefulness, pollution are just such huge themes in this movie. Like
Yeah.
the planet Earth is covered in junk and garbage, and like they everyone's got like their disposable cups on the spaceship, and they have the trash, like the big versions of Wally, the big trash compactors, and then everything just gets vented into space.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at any kind of like understanding of how much junk is actually currently orbiting Earth, like all the satellites we've sent up there, even if they're defunct now, they're still up there.
Yep.
And
We don't bring them back.
there will be a point where those orbits change, and they will burn up, hopefully burn up on reentry. But like, you know, like we are. I think the reality that everyone is probably aware of to some extent is that we are still polluting the world in big ways, whether that's like individually or on a society wide scale. And you know, seeing this, yeah, like, I think it provides a lot of hope, but it's also this kind of like reminder, like, hey, you know, we're still doing these things, and that's
Yeah.
rough. That's the older I get, the rougher that feels.
Mhm.
But
I mean, there's
simultaneously,
sorry.
I love at least that the movie gives us that sense of hope. So that,
Yeah.
God love it for that.
I it's I know. It's interesting too cuz like in the film, right?
Hmm.
We don't get the sense that people are consuming in the way that we consume insofar as like buying a bunch of stuff. Like nobody has a big collection of pop figures in
Yeah,
their rooms because their rooms are tiny. It's a spaceship. There's a space constraint, no
yeah,
pun intended. But um, you know, we still get the consumerism of like, oh, try blue. It's the new red and
yeah,
like little nods to a different type of consumerism,
yeah.
right? Um and kind of that speaks again to how are we ascribing value here in this life that we have created in the sky,
Hmm.
right? We've created a place where we don't it again, this is me assuming it is a kids movie so they don't actually show anything. But like they never show like couples. They are on the apps, but they like anybody leaving their room is leaving by themselves when we see that, right? We
Yeah, so
don't
much as we can
see
see. Yeah,
yeah, when they touch hands, it's like shocking. Not in like a scandalous way, but in a, oh, I haven't experienced human touch in a long time, you know? And that look into, okay, we value our comfort and our time alone and whatever, not working, I guess,
hmm,
question mark. But also, we've moved away from consumerism in the sense of buying all the things and moved more towards just survival as a standard,
mm.
which is really interesting to me. There's an incomplete thought there, but like take that and look again at Wally when he's on Earth at
Hmm.
the beginning. He has a um a Wally containment unit, which is supposed to house like hundreds and hundreds of Wallies. But because all of the other Wallies have died or become defunct or whatever,
Yeah,
he has started to fill those shelves with random collectible things that he deems cool.
yeah,
So we get his little collection of forks and spoons, and then he gets confused and puts a spork right in the middle of them. He has his Hello Dolly video cassette, which
hmm,
shout out to physical media, like 700 years later, still there. Um, and, you know, there's this wonderful moment where he finds a blue velvet ring box and he opens it up and it's a giant diamond ring. And he tosses the diamond ring aside and he keeps the box. And I'm like, that's. If that's not a narrative about what we find valuable and how we ascribe value to things, I don't know what is. Because, like, diamonds are just a rock. You know, like
yeah,
they're powerful, they're good for certain things, but they're just a rock and they're shiny.
yeah,
And like there's a whole philosophy that I'm not going to get into around, how we have built society around value of certain things over others. And this movie, as much as it is that kind of, high level, very cute, very like, it's Fern Gully for a new age, if you will. It's also forcing us to question, well, what do we deem as a life worth living?
Oh, for sure.
You know?
For sure. Yeah, like there there's still like you were saying something along the lines of like moving past this like baseline consumerism and into like this like more survival focused
Mhm.
existence. I think they're still deeply consumerist, but it's not like it's almost like that is the thing that they're using to fill the void because
Yeah.
all their survival needs are being met. But like they're not. You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs; they're not hitting that like self-actualization point on the pyramid, and
Mhm.
That's the thing that's missing. And the captain finds it. Uh, that guy, when he gets to throw a hoe down, he's gonna have a real good time. Like
Oh, yeah.
that's his like raison d'etre for a bit there. Yeah, like the that's like hugely inspiring. Just finding
Yeah.
like the thing that brings you joy and makes life worth living. And I think like
Mhm.
Wally obviously has Eve. Captain's got his hoe down and the plants and repopulating Earth.
Mhm.
And you know, yeah, I everything you just said, two thumbs
Yeah.
up. But you were kind of like talking about this again before we hit record, as we always do, because we chat forever about the actual things we're going to say before we actually say them. But yeah, there are some things that now, I'm looking at this and it raises some questions. Like they do have to rescue some babies during
Uh-huh.
the climactic action of this movie, but we don't see many kids. We don't see many old people, but that could just be like, they got really good healthcare now.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, they've been on this ship for 700 years. What's population control look like?
Yep.
These are some
Mhm.
pragmatic questions that the movie does not answer, and nor should it.
Yes.
Like, it's not under any
Correct. Yeah.
obligation to do it. This is just me being like a weirdo nitpicker. Um, what's population control look like? How do you have reserves of food? There are no animal. We don't see any animals.
Mhm.
And this is like obviously, as you were mentioning, again before we hit record, such an allegory or parallel to the Noah's Ark story.
Yep.
Like there are no animals. How's that going to work out? Are we to assume that they have cloning facilities for every animal on
Mhm.
Earth before the ecological disaster, and then I don't know, maybe there's some hand wavy thing there. But also the captain's like, we're gonna go grow pizza plants. Like
Yeah.
that's not how it works, my guy. Like, how's education gonna work? Um, he learns a lot, obviously, through
Mhm.
the computer system called Mother, which is sidebar a really fun shout out because Mother is voiced by Sigourney Weaver.
Yes.
In the iconic film Alien, the ship's computer is Mother.
Amazing.
So it's a real full circle thing there. Sigourney Weaver was, of course, in Alien. Also, this tape of Hello Dolly,
Mhm.
uh, cassettes do not last that long. I hate to say
Listen.
it. I hate to burst the bubble there. Like he's a little an industrious little robot, so he's probably found some ways to fix it. But he does the pencil in the cassette
Yeah.
trick to rewind it when
Mhm.
Eve messes it up. But even like archival magnetic tapes only
Yeah.
last maybe 70 years, like archival quality. The
How dare
average
you?
VHS cassette tape maybe 30. 700 years, that thing's gone. Like that's gone. So
So what you're saying is all those video cassettes at my parents' house from when I was a child.
they're probably still fine, but they're gonna start showing where. Like, if you're using a cassette regularly,
Oh.
probably like a lifespan of 30 years. Like I was a kid. I had a Mr. Bean video cassette from my grandparents, and I
Nice.
watched it so much I wore the tape out. you could not repair it at that point. Like we did the trick of like you're going to rewind it with a pencil. It was gone. Like because it gets stretched over time. That's the sad truth of it. But I did get to have the fun experience of like I decided I was like 10 years old. I'm going to take apart the cassette and see what's in there. So I got to see what's in a cassette. That was really fun. And
Very cool.
look at the actual, the tape that's in there. That was really neat.
Against the light. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. That's digression and a half.
Tangents. I love them. So so we're talking about value. We're talking about how we ascribe meaning to life and so on. And I think we devolved a little bit into what happens when they land. And we don't have to go deep into this, but it does kind of feel like WALL-E is the precursor to like Horizon Zero Dawn. You know what I mean? Because they land, they still have the help of machines. They have Mother, the computer. And now they're going out into the world and repopulating.
Yeah.
So instead of, putting ourselves into bunkers and like repopulating that way, it's a ship that has landed, planted itself like a seed, if you will, in the ground. And now the people will propagate. And in the credits, we go from cave person paintings through to like pencil sketches and charcoal through all the way to like pixel art, which is a really cool like fast forward of this is how humans have rebuilt humanity on Earth, which is really cool. And the idea that we go back through our painting styles in tandem with technology was really fun for me.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, art is political as well, right? Not just functional, but like the rediscovery of what we consider to be kind of humanity in a lot of ways. I love, and we measure it by art.
Yeah.
In this is really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like art is self-expression, and the again, like it's like the hierarchy of needs. Like you've got your food, you got your shelter. What comes next? Expression.
Yeah.
Self-actualization. The deeper, more esoteric thoughts about existence and life, and so it's just so lovely that like it does come back to that like it ends on that really like creative touch, and showing that like expression is just as like expression and joy are inherently valuable just by nature of like the joy that joy brings to life. I don't know. It's a little circular there, but you know what I mean.
The best and worst part of being human is all of the emotional waves that you go throughout your life. It's like how, you can't have the grief of loss without love.
Yeah.
It's the price you pay at the end of the love story.
Yeah.
The grief, right? And with this little idealized microcosm that was on the ship, we don't get a sense that there's loss or like sadness or strife because all of our needs are met, whatever. Which again, I go down a rabbit hole of I want to know everything. I want a dark sci-fi Black Mirror-esque situation sequel where we see all of the underpinnings of the society, but I also don't, right? Like I don't want that, but I do. I'm so like my lore brain kicks in of like, how would you do that thing in a contained system where you're anyway. But yeah, it's cool and I like it. And the fact that WALL-E and Eve and the robots have these very weirdly creative but very human lives where the humans don't, and the things that they put value on where the humans, again, don't because they've lost that kind of peace. I don't know. It's a very compelling story to me where we lose our sense of value in all things, not just in, commerce, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, like, yes. That's all I have to say. Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like the notion that value is inherently tied to commerce is just, we know it's not. We know it's
Yeah.
not. We absolutely know it's not. But yeah, it is that kind of like pitfall of discussion of values that it does seem to circle back to that so often. But what I really appreciate about this is that it is about finding the value in your own life, in the experience of your own life. So
yeah. The only thing Wally wants the entirety of this movie is to hold hands with Eve. That's it. That's what he wants, and that. Every time he gets, like, so close, he does the little scooch across the bench.
Yeah.
He, like, tries to, like, show her, like, this is how we hold hands with our robot hands. And you're just like, oh, he just wants to hold hands. It's just the sweetest. Although, I will say, as we are recording this, I am in the midst of reading Values by Mark Carney, the current Canadian Prime Minister. It is a fascinating book that talks explicitly about value in markets versus value, intrinsic humanity value. Definitely recommend. Very good book. Find it at your local library. I don't know. That's not even a political thing. That's just a very interesting look at how we conceive of quote unquote value.
Yeah.
But okay, so stepping a little bit back from that, the arc story. Because we're getting close to the end and I want to touch on this real quick. So I originally watched this movie as part of a Jewish media class, I believe, that I took in university because I have, like I said, the religion degree. And one of the things we talked about was Noah's Ark, because the earth has become flooded. We must flee. And obviously the ark only lasted, X number of days or weeks. And then they returned and had 2 of every animal and, brought the earth back to life after God was like, okay, we're good. We won't do that again. Here's a rainbow to tie a bow on all of it. But that's my cliff notes of that whole story. But in this one, by and large, it's the Walmart, but it has basically bought the world at this point. All of these conglomerates have come together to create one global president of the world, i.e. by and large. And they have decreed, hey, so about that planet, you got to get out of here. We're all buried alive, being buried alive here. So they, off into space. And 700 years go by and they discover that by and large has actually sent a directive to the autopilot to say, hey, you can't go back. We tried basically nothing and we're all out of ideas. So the world is over. And I say that because the president of by and large doesn't appear to age all that much between the first and the last video messages, right? They don't visibly age him. And that kicks off, 695 years of wandering in space forever. And so when they finally return to Earth, one of the things that the captain says is, upon seeing Earth, images from Eve, he says, she just needs to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a one-to-one, obviously, a retelling of the Ark story, because they don't bring 2 animals of all kinds. There is no promise from God that he's never going to do it again. But it is a rediscovery of humanity, returning to understand what our role is on the planet, which is kind of cool for me.
Mm-hmm.
As stewards, not as consumers, which is a poignant message for any time period, really. But, recently, obviously, a big deal. And the idea that if we are looking at when the Ark story was written, however long ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, And today, as we look at what it means to leave and come back, I think is really cool.
Mhm.
And our understanding of what it means to recreate, like I said, the world and be stewards of it, not just populate
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I think that the parallels to the arc story are definitely
Mhm.
there, but I think this presents a different twist on it in that, in many ways, we are God. We
Mhm.
have created the Great Flood for ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to live with it, and it is an explicit decision to flee the problem that we've created for ourselves. So, and there are some. I mean, there's the loose attempt to address the problem with the various Wall-E robots, and I mean, you're talking about like the president played by Fred Willard. He's got this like, okay, you're gonna come back when it's all clean because we're gonna clean it all up, and then like shortly after, he's got like the directive given to the autopilot is like, it's a wash.
Yeah.
Can't return home.
Mhm.
So like, I think like to me the implication there's like they set up this cleanup program, realize it's not the quick fix, and just immediately like, nope, call it off.
Yeah.
All good. Like we'll let this program run, but it's not going to work. Like
Yeah.
obviously, like by the time humans arrive again, it's still going to take a long time for everything to get cleaned up. But like they have Wally, they have at least a better understanding of what they can do. Like they have a ton of robots that they can lend a hand with this. And yeah, I think the obvious parallels to the arc story is like there's not going to be the clean slate that is promised by the arc story.
Mhm.
So it's playing off of that a little bit, and it's kind of that idea of like, yeah, the stewardship I think is the big thing here. It's like the coming into that responsibility and the understanding of that responsibility that humanity must look after its home, and not just in a it's ours and we do what we want with it, but in a you got to make sure it's good for the next generation, the generations to come.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah, that hits different now.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it was like not poignant in 2008, but it's just like we've also had, almost 20 years of continued like, no, we really do have to
Yeah.
look after this stuff.
Please.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it is, it's a message that continues to be
Mhm.
relevant and important.
Yeah. And I think it dials back again to that idea of value of
Yeah.
the Amazon rainforest has a lot of value, and not just because it's a lot of old lumber. There's a laundry list of reasons why it is important to maintain such
Yeah.
a biodiversity and ecosystem, etc. And it has nothing to do with something that'll show up on a line item on a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
So
Way to get all
that's
political.
I know, I'm sorry. I picked this cute little movie about garbage and listen. It's a cute love story. It's a beautiful film. If you want to learn more about garbage, I was listening to the podcast Ologies, and they have a garbageologist on the last couple weeks when we're recording, and it's really good. So learn more
Nice.
about garbage, y'all. It can tell some stories. Um, but all that to say, I guess that's it. That's the end of our episode. So now I ask you, Ben, if you're going to learn something about storytelling, Wally, why?
Yeah, again, because it's just such a great example of how you can tell a story without speaking,
Mm-hmm.
without relying on dialogue or words. You can just express uh, through visuals alone. You can tell a really powerful and compelling story. And
Yeah.
yeah, I dare someone to watch this and not get a little teary eyed. Um, but Farrah, if you're just looking to watch something on a Friday night, why Wally?
Because it is adorable and beautiful. The art style is obviously very Pixar, but the care with which they have designed the world is really cool. And if you ever get a chance, definitely look at the script too, because it is a absolute treat to look at the beeps and boops as they're defined in the scripting for this film, and then see it applied. And it's just fun, you know? I like with the Star Wars droids, they're all like, not droids, all the robots in Star Wars, they're all like
They're droids.
breaking your heart.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And this just takes that and just like dials it up a little bit of like, oh, you wanted some personality in your robots. Bring it on. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. So you can find us at Patreon as Coffee and Kurosawa. You can also find us on Blue Sky as Coffee Kurosawa Pod. You can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as Farrah Sarpkaya, and at sarpkaya.ca, where I lend my voice as a voice actor. Ben, where can the people find you?
The good folks listening at home can find me on Blue Skies at the Benjimon, and on Letterboxd is at Benjimon.
Amazing. Finally, we got consistency. I'm so proud of us. And that's it. So for now, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.